Hey everyone, this is Matt Hendricks with the Sharpening Guy, and today I just want to go over a couple things about choosing water stones if you're going to be sharpening your own knives. Now, one thing to note is that the technique that you use to sharpen your knives and your muscle memory and stuff like that is way more important than what stone you use. If you have really good technique, you can get really pretty good edges off of almost any stone. And if you have bad technique, then no matter what stone you have, you're really not going to get that great of edges. But that being said, here's a few things about stones. So first of all, you can divide stones into roughly two categories, and you can divide them into way more categories than that if you want. But there are splash and go stones. So for instance, the Sharpening glass stone is a splash and go. You just splash water on it, you're good to go. And then there's soaking stones. For instance, here's a king water stone, and you have to soak it before you use it. Any soaking stones I have live in water, so they're always ready when I need them. But you could soak yours for 10, 15, 20 minutes before you use it. Go ahead and use it, and then put it away somewhere to dry, and then soak it again next time. But either way, both types are fine. Now, in my opinion, if you are just somebody, sharpening your knives at home in the kitchen every once in a while, splash and go stones would probably be more convenient for you. But if you have a water tub set up somewhere and soaking your stones isn't a big deal to you, then soaking stones are nice too. So anyway, so that being said, the other thing about stones is some stones are a lot harder. For instance, the Sharpening glass stone is a very hard stone, and some stones are a lot softer. For instance, this old 1000 grit Japanese water stone is a very soft stone. It dishes very quickly. It's a very muddy stone. And anyway, it's a very soft stone. Now, a lot of this comes down to personal preference. And personally, my personal preference tends to be for a lot harder stones. And you can find soaking stones that are harder too. Just because it's a soaking stone doesn't mean that it'll be softer. But anyway, my preference tends to be for harder stones. The one exception to that, though, is if you are trying to get a certain finish on a wide bevel knife, like say on the front of a Yanagiba, or if you have a Gyuto with wide bevels or something and you're trying to get a certain finish on it, a lot of times softer stones will get you an even finish on a wide bevel faster than a harder stone will. So if I'm doing something like that, then I might pull out some softer stones. But generally speaking, my personal preference is for hard stones. That doesn't mean that you will like hard stones better, but it does mean that I like hard stones better. So anyway, so now that, they're splash and go stones, then some stones are harder and softer. And if you're looking at a stone, you can read about it and see how hard or soft or whatever people say. And if you try a couple different ones out, you'll, I'm sure, develop a sense for what you like and dislike. But regardless of what type of stone you get, whether they're soaking stones or splash and go stones or a harder stone or a softer stone, or you're going to need 2 to 3 stones basically if you want to sharpen your kitchen knives with them. So the first stone is you're going to need a medium grit stone. And a medium grit stone would be anything in the 800 to 2000 grit range. Now, I tend to use 1000 grit stones. This is a Sharpening glass stone 1000. And right now, this is my favorite medium grit stone. It's the one I by far use the most. I've been testing out this Sharpening Pro 1000, which I mounted to a wood base here, just so that when it got really thin, I could still use it. And I like this one pretty well too. Right now, I like the glass stone a little bit better, but maybe that's just because I've used it more. I've actually worn several of these 1000 grit glass stones out. So, but anyway, but whatever the case, you're going to want some sort of medium grit stone. For general resharpening, this is probably the stone you're going to start with. So then the second stone you're going to need is a finishing stone. And finishing stones, again, some of them soak, some of them are splash and go. But finishing stones are in the 4,000 to 8,000 grit range, or some people would say 3,000 to 8,000 grit. And you can get stones higher than 8,000 grit too, but for a kitchen knife, I really wouldn't go above 8,000 grit. And most of the time, something into 4,000 and 6,000 grit range will probably give you a better, longer lasting edge on a kitchen knife. So anyway, this is a Chijiro 4,000 grit stone, which right now is my favorite finishing stone for kitchen knives. I mean, again, a lot of that's personal preference, but it just gives really nice, sharp, and long-lasting edges if you use it properly. But, you know, the Kitayama 8,000 works really well too if you prefer, you know, a finer stone like that. Or even, like I was saying earlier, if you're going for an inexpensive stone, you know, like here's a King Ice Bear 6,000 grit stone, and if you use it the right way, even off of this inexpensive King stone, you can get edges that are sharp enough to comfortably shave your face with. So, so any one of these stones, or, you know, you could use a, like a Shapton 6,000 or 4,000 or 8,000 or something like that, or Naniwa makes a bunch of stones, or so the exact stone isn't important, but you're going to need a finishing stone. So after you use the medium stone, then you'll go to the finishing stone like I show in a lot of my other videos. Now, those two stones are really all that you have to have. That being said, having a rough stone, you know, like this one or this one, for instance, can be really helpful if, say, you have a lot of thinning to do on your knife, or if you just want to speed the process up of sharpening your knife, then you can start with this and then go to the medium grit stone and then go to the fine grit stone, and generally speaking, that will save you time. My favorite rough stone right now is the Geshin 400 grit stone. It's a soaking stone. I really like it. This one is also a nice one. This is the Beston 500 grit stone, and it works pretty well too. I just like this Geshin 400 one a little bit better. And, you know, there's a whole bunch of other rough stones you could try too. But anyway, so if you want to get add a third stone, then a rough stone like this would be what you would want to choose next. So anyway, when you're choosing your stones, don't get too tied up about it. Don't get all caught up in what exact stone is the very best, or, you know, you have to have this specific one, or, like I said, whether you have king stones or, you know, Shaptons or anything in between or whatever, they'll all work fine if you know how to use them. And a lot of it too is personal preference. Like, some people just like softer stones, and some people like me tend to like harder stones. And also, like I said earlier, it depends on what you're doing with them. You know, I do most of my rough thinning and polishing and stuff on, you know, other equipment in my shop, so I don't spend much time with a wide bevel on a waterstone. You know, usually I sharpen the edge on a waterstone and do other stuff on other equipment in my shop. So, you know, that might be one reason why I like harder stones better, whereas if you were trying to polish a lot of wide bevels on waterstones, then you might want some softer stones for doing that. But anyway, there's just some basic guidelines about what you might want to get. Like I said, for kitchen knives, my favorite lineup right now is the Geshin 400, the Shapton Glass Stone 1000, and the Chijiro 4000, but I'm constantly testing stuff out and trying stuff out, so that might change, but anyway, for what it's worth, that's what it is right now. If you were, you know, doing razors or woodworking tools or chisels or stuff like that, then you're going to want a higher grit finishing stone, probably 8,000 grit or higher, you know, maybe 10,000, 12,000, 16,000, something like that. But for kitchen knives, as you know, anything in the 4 to 8,000 grit range, but particularly in the 4 to 6,000 grit range, really works well as a finishing stone for kitchen cutlery. So anyway, hope that helps. Thanks for watching.